Ma'am, I need you to
Ma'am, I
stand.
need you to stand.
The words cut through the first-class cabin, sharp and sudden like a snapped wire. Cameron Blake looked up. Her fingers still
gentleman is
rested
a
on the
preferred
chilled rim of her
guest.
champagne glass. The flight attendant stood before her, smile polite, eyes hollow. Behind her, a white man in a gray suit had already placed a hand on the seat divider as if the space were his by default. No further explanation. The order was written in posture. "This gentleman is a preferred guest," the attendant said softly, voice smooth as silk drawn across a blade. "There's been a seating adjustment." Heads turned. A few phones lifted discreetly. Cameron glanced at the boarding pass in her hand, 1A, booked weeks ago. Silence thickened around her, heavy as pressure at altitude. She drew a slow breath, steady but tight, anger burning low in her chest. Then she stood. No protest. Only her gaze remained, cold, direct, unforgetting. Cameron had boarded quietly. No assistant, no monogrammed luggage, just a black leather backpack and a carry-on she'd rolled through the terminal herself. She'd smiled at Rachel Martinez when she scanned her boarding pass, a genuine smile, the kind she gave everyone. Rachel barely looked up. Her eyes skimmed Cameron's face, then the pass, then flicked toward the back of the plane. "Premium economy's that way." Cameron pointed to the seat number on her screen. "I'm in 1A. Rachel's brow furrowed, not confusion, but doubt. She turned to a younger flight attendant in the galley. "We've got a situation." Not a mix-up. A situation. The cabin shifted. Conversations paused. A woman in 2C glanced over her magazine. A man in 3A lowered his phone. Cameron kept her expression neutral. She knew what they were thinking. She could feel it. They always try this. Rachel returned, smile tighter. "Ma'am, I need you to step aside so we can board other passengers. I'd like to speak to the lead flight attendant." Rachel's jaw tightened. She walked toward the cockpit without another word. Cameron stood there, backpack still on her shoulder, boarding pass in hand. Around her, passengers settled in, unfolding newspapers, adjusting pillows, ordering drinks. A woman in her 60s with pearls and a Chanel bag shook her head as she passed. Not in sympathy, in judgment. A man in a gray suit whispered to his wife. She nodded, lips pressed thin. Cameron had seen this before, in boardrooms, at conferences, in hotels where she'd been asked. Politely, always politely, if she was sure she had a reservation. The pattern was old, predictable, exhausting. But she wasn't exhausted. She was observing. She noted Rachel's body language, the averted eyes, the tight shoulders, the whispers spreading through the cabin. The time, 6:47 p.m. They were already 15 minutes behind schedule. And she noted the man approaching from the jet bridge, tall, white, mid-50s, Armani suit, leather briefcase. He walked past her without a glance, heading straight for seat 1A. Cameron watched him sit down. She didn't say a word. Because she knew something they didn't. Summit Air didn't just want her business. They needed it. Their entire infrastructure was being transitioned to Stratus systems. Flight scheduling, fuel management, baggage tracking, crew coordination. The contract had been negotiated for 8 months. Integration would go live in 72 hours. And Cameron Blake held the kill switch. But here, she was just another black woman being told she didn't belong. The lead flight attendant appeared. Jessica Barnes, according to her name tag. Older than Rachel, more polished. She approached with practiced ease. "Good evening. I understand there's confusion about your seat." Cameron handed her the phone. "No confusion. That's my seat." Jessica looked at the screen, scrolled, handed it back. "The system shows 1A was reassigned this morning due to an operational need. Premium economy has been upgraded for your comfort." "Reassigned to whom?" Jessica hesitated, then smiled. "I'm not at liberty to disclose other passengers' information. The decision was made at a corporate level." Cameron let the silence stretch. Every pair of eyes in first class was on her. waiting, judging, expecting her to make a scene. She didn't. What's Summit Air's policy on seat reassignments? Jessica's smile held. We reserve the right to adjust seating for operational priorities. What qualifies as a priority? Case-by-case basis. Cameron nodded slowly. She looked past Jessica toward seat 1A, where the man in the Armani suit reclined, scrolling his phone with the ease of someone never questioned. Then she looked back at Jessica. Thank you for clarifying. She turned and walked toward the back of the plane. Jessica watched her go, visibly relieved. What she didn't see was the smile on Cameron's face as she reached row 18. What none of them saw was the email already forming in her mind. Jessica Barnes turned away, satisfied. Rachel stood near the galley, arms crossed, watching Cameron with barely concealed vindication. The boarding process resumed. Passengers filing in, overhead bins slamming, the hum of voices settling into routine. Cameron lowered herself into seat 18C, worn vinyl, half the legroom she'd paid for. She set her backpack down, opened her laptop, and began to work. Her face betrayed nothing, but her mind was cataloging everything. The man in 1A had made himself comfortable. Suit jacket hung on the hook, champagne in hand. He scrolled his phone with the casual ease of someone who'd never been questioned. Jessica leaned toward Rachel at the front of the cabin, voice low but carrying. Corporate request. Last-minute VIP. Nothing we could do. Rachel nodded, her expression shifting from defensive to sympathetic. The narrative was being built in real time. Not bias, just logistics. Cameron's inbox showed 3 new emails from David Morrison, CEO of Summit Air. Looking forward to Monday's signing. Integration timeline confirmed. Partnership of the decade. She didn't open them. Instead, she pulled up Summit Air's file on her internal portal. 8 months of negotiations. A platform designed to replace their failing infrastructure. Systems so fragile, a single disruption could ground flights and cost millions per hour. Her CFO had flagged concerns during due diligence. Complaints, settlements, patterns of bias. Cameron had pushed forward anyway, believing change came from partnership, not isolation. She was reconsidering. The man in 1A stretched into the space that should have been hers. He was on a call now, voice carrying. No, I handled it. Told them exactly what I thought. These people don't understand how business works. These people. Cameron's jaw tightened, but her face stayed neutral. Jessica reappeared with a tablet, scrolling, frowning. She moved toward the cockpit faster than before. 2 minutes later, she emerged and walked directly to 1A, leaning down to speak quietly to the man in the Armani suit. He looked up, irritated, gestured dismissively. Jessica straightened and walked away. But Cameron had seen the tension in her shoulders, the tight grip on the tablet. They knew, not everything, not yet. But something was wrong. A passenger ahead of Cameron, a young black man in a tech hoodie, glanced back at her. His eyes widened in recognition, not of her face, but of the situation, the quiet humiliation, the invisible weight of power. He nodded once, barely perceptible. Cameron nodded back. The engines started, their rumble vibrating through the cabin. The captain welcomed everyone aboard, promising an on-time departure. Cameron buckled in and opened a blank email. Subject: Protocol Sigma. Standby initiate full audit of Summit Air contract. Suspend integration access pending ethics review. Hold system deployment until further notice. She read it twice, then she deleted it. Not yet. She wanted them to feel safe first, to believe they'd won. The plane began to taxi. Rachel moved through the cabin, checking seatbelts. When she passed row 18, she didn't look at Cameron, didn't ask if she needed anything, just kept walking. Cameron leaned back and closed her eyes. She thought about every room where she'd been the only one who looked like her. Every time she'd been interrupted, dismissed, underestimated. Every time she'd smiled through it, played the long game, proven herself twice over just to be seen as half as good. Patience, she'd told herself, was power. But right now, patience felt like complicity. The plane turned onto the runway. Through the window, the terminal lights faded into darkness. Cameron pulled out her phone one last time before switching to airplane mode, and she sent the email. The plane leveled off at cruising altitude. The seatbelt sign blinked off, and the cabin exhaled. Passengers unbuckling, reclining, reaching for devices and magazines. In first class, Rachel moved through the aisle with hot towels and pre-dinner drinks, her smile warm and attentive for each passenger. When she reached seat 1A, she paused. "Mr. Collier, can I get you anything else?" So that was his name, Richard Collier. Cameron made a mental note. Richard waved her off with casual dismissiveness. "I'm fine. Maybe the menu in a few minutes." Rachel nodded and moved forward. Cameron watched from row 18, her laptop open, but her attention fixed on the choreography of deference unfolding 30 feet ahead, the invisible lines dividing the cabin into hierarchies of worth. Jessica appeared from the galley, tablet in hand, and approached Richard's seat. She leaned in, voice low, shoulders slightly bowed. Cameron couldn't hear the words, but she could read the body language: apology, deference, placation. Richard looked up, irritation flickering across his face. He said something sharp, gestured toward his briefcase, then returned to his phone. Jessica straightened and retreated. A moment later, she walked down the aisle toward Cameron. Cameron didn't look up until Jessica stopped beside her seat. "Miss Blake." Jessica's professional mask was intact, but there were cracks, tiny fissures in her posture, the way her fingers gripped the tablet. "I wanted to follow up regarding your seat. I've reviewed your booking. You did reserve 1A originally. Unfortunately, due to operational priorities, it was reassigned. We've upgraded your premium economy seat as compensation." Cameron let the silence stretch. Passengers around them leaned in slightly, pretending not to listen. "Operational priorities. What does that mean?" Jessica's smile tightened. "Certain passengers receive priority accommodation based on their relationship with the airline or the nature of their travel. What qualifies someone as priority?" The script Jessica had been given hadn't included follow-up questions. "It's determined case by case by our corporate team. Not by fare class, not by reservation time, just discretion." "That's correct." Cameron nodded slowly, as if processing this for the first time. As if she hadn't understood exactly what was happening the moment Rachel told her to move. Jessica shifted her weight. "We apologize for any inconvenience. If there's anything else we can do..." "I'd like Summit Air's written policy on seat reassignments, specifically the criteria for priority determination." Jessica blinked. "I don't have that information available." "That's fine. I'll request it through official channels." Jessica's mask slipped. Confusion, then alarm. She recovered with forced cheerfulness. "Of course. Anything else?" Cameron smiled. "No, thank you." Jessica retreated. Cameron returned to her laptop, but she wasn't working. She was watching. Richard had reclined fully, shoes off, feet stretched into the space reserved for passengers who'd paid what Cameron paid. He was on a call, voice carrying with performative authority. "You should have seen this CEO at the conference last month. Young, black, thought she could command respect just because she had some tech startup. I had to remind her how things actually work. Education and ambition don't mean much if you don't understand the culture." The woman beside him, older, white, expensive jewelry, made a small sound of agreement. Cameron's fingers stilled. She'd heard variations of this speech before. In conference rooms, at industry dinners, in the coded language of men who believed merit was something they possessed inherently. But hearing it here, 30 feet from where she sat in the seat she'd been removed from, felt different, visceral, deliberate. Richard continued. These people think DEI initiatives give them a free pass, but business is about relationships, trust, knowing who belongs. These people. Cameron closed her laptop and pulled out her phone. She texted her general counsel. Need full documentation on Summit Air, bias complaints, settlements, HR reports, everything, tonight. Also, pull integration kill switch protocols. I want to know exactly what happens if we revoke access. She hit send. A passenger across the aisle, a middle-aged black woman in business attire, caught Cameron's eye. The woman's expression was carefully neutral, but Cameron saw the recognition, the shared understanding, the exhaustion. Cameron looked away first, not from shame, from strategy. In the galley, Rachel and Jessica stood close together, whispering. Rachel glanced back toward row 18, said something that made Jessica shake her head sharply. Rachel's face flushed. The plane shuddered. Turbulence. The seatbelt sign blinked on. Richard groaned, annoyed. Jessica hurried to check on him first. Cameron buckled her seatbelt and stared out the window. Below, the country stretched in grids of light and shadow. Highways through farmland, towns glowing like embers. From up here, everything looked orderly, fair. But Cameron knew better. Systems didn't regulate themselves. They protected the people who built them. And when those systems failed, when they didn't deliver what they'd promised, someone had to decide whether to fix them or let them burn. She opened her email and began typing. Subject: Protocol Sigma. Activate effective immediately. Suspend all cloud access for Summit Air pending ethics review. Lock scheduling AI. Terminate route optimization. Freeze contract execution until corporate leadership addresses documented pattern of discriminatory practices. Her thumb hovered over send. Not yet. The plane was still airborne. She wanted them on the ground first, surrounded by witnesses, by cameras, by consequence. She saved the draft and closed her laptop. In first class, Richard laughed at something on his phone. Rachel refilled his champagne without being asked. Jessica moved through the cabin with practiced efficiency, her attention carefully distributed, generous to some passengers, perfunctory to others. The pattern was clear, had always been clear. Cameron had spent her career navigating these patterns, playing the long game, proving herself twice over just to be seen as half as competent. She'd told herself it was worth it, that change was slow, that patience was power. But sitting in row 18, in the seat she'd been moved to, listening to Richard Collier explain why people like her didn't belong, patience felt like complicity. She thought about every room where she'd been the only one, every time she'd been interrupted mid-sentence, every time someone had assumed she was the assistant, the coordinator, anyone but the person in charge, every time she'd smiled through it because fighting meant losing, and losing meant proving them right. She was tired of smiling. The flight attendant call button above her head glowed softly in the dim cabin light. Cameron looked at it for a long moment, then looked away. She didn't need their attention anymore. She pulled out her phone one more time and opened her draft folder. The email sat there, complete, ready. These policies didn't just target someone at random. They targeted people who looked like her, people who'd been told in 1,000 subtle ways that they didn't belong. But did they know who they were dealing with? Cameron's finger moved to the send button. She took a breath, and she pressed it. The email vanished from her screen. Somewhere in a data center, servers processed her command. Access codes began to change. Security protocols activated. Integration pipelines shut down. In 72 hours, Summit Air's entire operation was supposed to go live on Stratus Systems' platform. Now, it was frozen. Cameron leaned back in seat 18C and closed her eyes. The plane flew on through the darkness, oblivious to what had just been set in motion. 30 minutes into the flight, Richard Collier had made himself entirely at home in seat 1A. He'd accepted a second glass of champagne, declined dinner with a dismissive wave, and settled into what appeared to be a series of phone calls. Voice memos, actually, recorded into his device with the volume turned up just enough that the entire first-class cabin could hear. Cameron listened from row 18, her laptop screen dark now, her attention fully focused forward. "Mike, it's Richard. Just wanted to update you on the Chicago deal." His voice carried the practiced cadence of someone who enjoyed the sound of his own authority. "I shut down their counteroffer immediately. You know how these mid-level guys are. They see one successful quarter and suddenly think they're players. I had to remind him that relationships matter more than spreadsheets in this business." He paused, scrolling his phone, then continued. "Actually reminds me of that tech conference in Denver last month. Some CEO, also black, also young, stood up during the panel and tried to lecture the room about disruption and innovation. Kept talking about systemic barriers and unconscious bias." Richard's laugh was sharp, condescending. "I pulled her aside afterward and explained very politely that this industry runs on trust, on knowing who belongs at the table. She didn't appreciate the advice, of course. They never do." The woman beside him, seated in 2A, wearing a Cartier watch and pearls, made a soft sound of agreement without looking up from her magazine. Rachel appeared with the dinner cart, offering Richard his choice of entrees despite his earlier refusal. He waved her off again, but she lingered, attentive, ready. Cameron's phone buzzed in her hand, a text from her general counsel. Pulled the files. Summit Air settled 4 discrimination cases in the past 18 months, all involving Black or Latinx passengers. Crew complaints on file, too. This is a pattern. Cameron typed back, "How long until Protocol Sigma takes full effect?" The response came immediately. Already active. Their scheduling AI locked out. Cloud access suspended. They won't notice until they try to access the system on the ground. Cameron set her phone down and exhaled slowly. 3 rows ahead, a passenger, the young black man in the tech company hoodie, had his phone out, angled carefully toward first class. Cameron couldn't see his screen from her position, but she knew what he was doing. She'd seen that posture before. The deliberate casualness, the quiet documentation of something wrong. Richard was still recording voice memos, his tone shifting from patronizing to openly contemptuous. "The problem with these diversity initiatives is they put people in positions they're not ready for, and then we're all supposed to pretend it's working." He shook his head, amused by his own insight. "Merit matters. Experience matters. But try saying that in a room full of HR consultants and see what happens." The woman in 2A finally looked up. "It's exhausting, isn't it? Having to watch every word." Richard smiled. "Exactly. You get it." Cameron's jaw tightened, but her face remained neutral. She'd learned long ago that anger, visible anger, was a luxury she couldn't afford. Not in boardrooms, not on planes, not anywhere her reaction could be used as evidence of exactly what they expected from her. So she sat still, observed, waited. The young man in the tech hoodie pulled his phone closer, fingers moving rapidly across the screen. Then he angled it slightly higher, making sure the camera captured both Richard's face and the seat number. A notification lit up Cameron's phone. Twitter. She opened it. The tweet was already live. "Flying Summit Air right now. They just removed a black woman CEO from first class, seat she paid for, to make room for a white executive. The CEO? Oh, Cameron Blake, CEO of Stratus Systems. You know, the company Summit Air is about to sign a $700 million deal with. This is her in 18C. Attached was a photo, slightly grainy but clear enough. Cameron in row 18, laptop closed, face composed, and in the background, just visible through the gap between seats, Richard Collier in 1A, champagne glass in hand. Cameron stared at the screen. She hadn't expected this, hadn't asked for it, but now that it existed, now that the truth was being broadcast in real time, she felt something shift inside her. Not vindication, not yet, but possibility. The young man, Marcus, according to his Twitter bio, software engineer at a startup Cameron had heard of, was still typing. Another tweet. Mr. Collier here is on a call right now explaining how these people don't understand business culture. I'm recording. Receipts incoming. Cameron watched the tweet appear, watched the like count climb. 5, 20, 50. Around her, other passengers were beginning to notice. A woman across the aisle leaned toward her husband, whispering and gesturing toward first class. 2 rows back, someone pulled out their phone and opened Twitter. In the galley, Rachel's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, frowned, then looked sharply toward row 18. Her face went pale. She turned and walked quickly toward the cockpit, nearly colliding with Jessica in the narrow aisle. Jessica grabbed Rachel's arm. "What's wrong?" Rachel showed her the phone. Cameron couldn't see the screen, but she saw Jessica's reaction. The sudden stiffness in her shoulders, the way her hand flew to her mouth before she forced it down. Jessica looked toward row 18, then toward seat 1A, then back at Rachel. They spoke in urgent whispers. Jessica's face shifted from alarm to something closer to panic. Another notification. Marcus had posted a second photo, this one of Richard, mid-laugh, clearly visible and clearly identifiable. The caption, "Summit Air's priority passenger, everyone." Name tag says Collier. Anyone know him? The replies were already flooding in. Regional director at Summit. Holy shit. This is going to be a PR nightmare. Someone tagged their corporate account. Cameron set her phone face down on the tray table. She hadn't started this, but she wasn't going to stop it either. In first class, Richard remained oblivious. He'd moved on to another voice memo, this one about quarterly projections and market positioning. His tone was relaxed, confident, the voice of someone who'd never had to consider consequences. Jessica approached him, her professional mask firmly in place despite the fear in her eyes. "Mr. Collier, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Could I speak with you privately for just a moment?" Richard looked up, annoyed. "I'm in the middle of something." "I understand, sir, but it's somewhat urgent." He sighed, paused his recording, and followed her to the galley. Cameron couldn't hear their conversation, but she watched Jessica's body language, apologetic, deferential, desperate. Richard's expression shifted from annoyance to confusion to something harder. He glanced back toward the cabin, then at Jessica, then pulled out his own phone. His face changed immediately. On the ground, 3,000 miles away, David Morrison sat in his office on the 42nd floor of Summit Air's headquarters. His assistant had left for the day. The building was quiet, winding down toward evening. His phone rang. Corporate communications. He almost didn't answer. "David, we have a situation." The VP's voice was tight, controlled panic. "Twitter! A passenger on Flight 6 on 12 is live streaming a discrimination incident. They removed a black woman from first class. The woman is Cameron Blake." David's hand froze halfway to his coffee mug. "What?" "Cameron Blake, CEO of Stratus Systems. She's on one of our flights right now, and she was removed from her assigned first-class seat to accommodate Richard Collier. It's all over social media. We're trending, not in a good way." David opened his laptop with shaking hands. The Twitter feed loaded. He saw the photos, the captions, the replies multiplying by the second. His phone buzzed with an incoming email. The subject line made his stomach drop. Protocol Sigma. Activated. He opened it. Effective immediately. All cloud access for Summit Air suspended pending ethics review. AI scheduling platform locked. Route optimization system terminated. Integration deployment frozen. Contract execution on hold until corporate leadership addresses documented pattern of discriminatory practices. C. Blake, CEO, Stratus Systems. David stood up so fast his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. He tried to call Cameron. The call went straight to voicemail, airplane mode. He tried the general Stratus Systems line, an automated message. All inquiries regarding Summit Air integration should be directed to our Legal and Compliance Department. He pulled up the operations dashboard. Red alerts covered the screen. System access denied. Manual override failed. Backup protocols unresponsive. Summit Air's entire digital infrastructure had been running parallel to Stratus's platform for the past 6 months, preparing for full integration. They'd already transitioned pilot scheduling, fuel management, baggage tracking, and gate coordination to Stratus's cloud. The legacy systems were being phased out. Without Stratus, they had nothing. David grabbed his phone and called the CTO. "How bad is it?" "We're locked out completely. Can't access scheduling, can't coordinate crew assignments, can't process baggage routing. We're about 30 minutes away from flight delays. If this lasts more than 2 hours, we're looking at cancellations. If it lasts overnight..." The CTO's voice trailed off. David didn't need him to finish. Overnight meant chaos, grounded planes, stranded passengers, millions in losses, maybe tens of millions. He pulled up Flight 612's status, still in the air, landing in 45 minutes. He had 45 minutes to fix this. His phone rang again. The board chair. "David, what the hell is happening? I'm getting calls from investors. CNN just picked up the story. Do you know what this is going to do to our stock price?" David closed his eyes. "I'm handling it." "Handle it faster." The line went dead. Back on Flight 612, Jessica returned to the galley where Rachel stood gripping the counter, her face ashen. "I just got a call from ground operations," Jessica whispered. "There's an executive team waiting at the gate. They want Ms. Blake escorted off first. VIP treatment. Whatever she wants." Rachel's voice shook. "What about Collier?" Jessica didn't answer. She didn't have to. In row 18, Cameron felt her phone buzz with a new text. Her CFO. "Morrison's been trying to reach you for 20 minutes. Their operations dashboard is lighting up like a Christmas tree. They know." Cameron typed back. "Good." She looked up toward first class. Richard had returned to his seat, but his demeanor had changed. The ease was gone. He sat stiffly, phone in both hands, scrolling rapidly. Every few seconds, he glanced toward the back of the plane, then back at his screen. He knew. The cabin around Cameron had transformed. Passengers were no longer pretending not to pay attention. They were watching openly now, phones out, some recording, some tweeting, some just staring at the unfolding drama with the morbid fascination reserved for public downfalls. The woman who'd been sitting across from Cameron, the one who'd caught her eye earlier, leaned across the aisle. "I hope they're paying attention now." Cameron met her gaze. "They are." The plane began its initial descent. The captain's voice came over the intercom, smooth and oblivious, announcing their approach and thanking everyone for flying Summit Air. Cameron buckled her seatbelt and opened her laptop one final time. She pulled up the Summit Air contract. $700 million. 8 months of negotiation. Hundreds of hours of engineering work. And beneath it all, a single clause she'd insisted on during the final round of revisions. Either party may terminate this agreement if the other party engages in conduct inconsistent with the ethical standards outlined in Appendix D, Section 4, Non-Discrimination and Inclusive Practice. Her lawyer had questioned the clause. Summit's team had tried to remove it. Cameron had refused to sign without it. Now she knew why. She closed the laptop and looked out the window as the plane descended through the clouds. Below, the city lights spread out like a constellation, orderly, beautiful, indifferent. Everything was about to change. The plane touched down hard. The cabin erupted, bins popping, passengers reaching for bags, shuffling toward exit. Cameron didn't move. She sat in 18C, hands folded, watching. Jessica appeared at the front, phone to ear, face panicked. Rachel wrung her hands beside her. In 1A, Richard gathered belongings too quickly. The confidence was gone. He kept checking his phone, jaw clenched. Seatbelt sign off. Jessica moved down the aisle, toward Cameron. Every passenger watched. Phones recording. Marcus captured everything. Jessica stopped at row 18, mask fracturing. Ms. Blake, on behalf of Summit Air, I apologize. Significant misunderstanding. Our ground team is waiting. Cameron looked up, calm. A misunderstanding. I should have verified. Not an error, a policy. Silence. Jessica went pale. Please, if we could speak privately? Here is fine. Steel underneath calm. You said first class was for priority passengers. Value. Mr. Collier got my seat. Reserved 3 weeks ago, confirmed twice, paid because of operational priority. Discretion. She stood, backpack out, deliberate. Every eye tracked her. What criteria made him priority and me not? Jessica's hands trembled. I don't have that information, but I do. Cameron held up her phone. Screen showed Protocol Sigma, activated. Jessica stared. 6 months ago, Summit signed with my company, Stratus Systems, to modernize your infrastructure. Scheduling, fuel, baggage, everything. 700 million, integration Monday. Understanding dawned. 2 hours ago, I suspended it. Access locked, AI offline, route optimization terminated, backup protocols non-functional. Jessica's mouth opened. No sound. Behind her, Richard went still. Cameron stepped into aisle. Passengers pressed back. Phones raised. Your CEO has been calling me for 30 minutes. Operations dashboard is red. Your CTO is realizing without Stratus, Summit can't coordinate a single flight. She moved forward, measured. Jessica stumbled back. You misunderstood who was in row 18. Misunderstood the cost. Misunderstood what happens when you treat people like me as if we don't matter. She reached the front, through windows, gate, suits waiting, faces urgent. Richard stood, briefcase in hand. Wait, I don't know who you think. Cameron turned. The look stopped him. You don't know who I am. That's the problem. Door opened. 3 executives rushed in. At front, David Morrison, 50s, graying, flushed. He froze. Ms. Blake, I cannot apologize enough. This is unacceptable. Cameron held up a hand. You need to talk. 2 hours ago, your staff told me I didn't belong. Removed me. Gave my seat to Mr. Collier. Discretionary. David went ashen. He looked toward Jessica, expression murderous. Tell everyone what made Mr. Collier priority. Criteria? Relationship? Frequent flyer or something else? Around them, passengers in aisle, phones recording. Marcus live streaming. 80,000 viewers. We'll investigate. Your employees followed your policies. Policies you approved. Discretion that always works one direction. She stepped closer. David stepped back. 4 discrimination settlements. 18 months. Multiple HR complaints. Pattern so clear my legal team flagged it. I ignored it. Believed in partnership. Pause. I was wrong. David's hands shook. We can fix. You didn't remove a passenger. You removed your future. 700 million frozen. Operations crippled. Check your stock price. David pulled phone. Face went gray. Cameron turned to passengers. To Marcus, stream passing 100,000. To the woman with tears streaming. This isn't revenge. Consequence. When systems fail. When policies enable discrimination. When power diminishes. Back to David. 48 hours to prove Summit is worthy of trust. Not mine. Trust of every person who looks like me. Every employee ignored. Every passenger removed, dismissed, humiliated. Backpack over shoulder. 48 hours. Then contract terminates. You explain to your board why Summit lost 700 million because staff couldn't see past skin color. Cameron walked past him, through jet bridge, into terminal, cabin frozen, silent. Marcus whispered, Holy shit. Words echoed through 100,000 screens. Then, slowly, passengers applauded. Cameron walked through the terminal with measured pace. Behind her, commotion at the gate, raised voices, hurried footsteps, David Morrison trying to salvage what was already lost. She didn't look back. Her phone buzzed continuously. Messages from her team, journalists, people she hadn't spoken to in years. She silenced it and kept walking. By baggage claim, the story had gone fully viral. Marcus's live stream surpassed 2 million views. Other passengers posted footage, news outlets picking it up. Summit Air racism trending nationwide. Her phone rang. General Counsel. They're moving fast. Jessica Barnes and Rachel Martinez terminated immediately, escorted out by security. Morrison's holding a press conference in an hour. And Collier? Suspended. But there's more. Summit's board held emergency session. Morrison's on notice. 48 hours or he's out. Cameron pushed through exit doors. Legal exposure? Collier's worse than we thought. His comments on video, multiple angles, grounds for substantial civil suit, defamation, discrimination, emotional distress, 7 figures, potentially 8. File it. Against Collier personally. You sure? Summit has deeper pockets. Summit is a company. Companies can change. Collier chose to be exactly who he is. He needs consequences beyond press releases. Understood? The contract? 48 hours. If Morrison demonstrates genuine structural change, actual implementation, we'll consider reinstating. Otherwise, it terminates. The next 48 hours moved brutally. Summit's stock dropped 11% after hours. By morning, another 6%. Investors demanded answers. FAA opened inquiry. Pilots' unions issued statements about systemic culture issues. Morrison's press conference was disaster. Voice shaking, apologizing for the incident, promising thorough review. When asked to name a single black executive in Summit's C-suite, he hesitated too long. When asked if he'd approved the reassignment, he deflected. Clips went viral. Jessica gave interview, crying, insisting she'd followed protocol. We were told to accommodate VIPs. I didn't know who she was. Interviewer pressed. Should it matter who she was? No answer. Richard released statement claiming words, taken out of context, had utmost respect for diversity. Marcus posted unedited audio, 12 minutes. Collier's lawyer went silent. 3 days later, Summit's new interim chief diversity officer, position created 72 hours earlier, sent formal request. Comprehensive plan, mandatory bias training, independent audit of complaints, VIP policy overhaul, passenger advocacy board with community seats. Not perfect, but substantive. Cameron reviewed with legal team, made a call. David, I've seen your plan. Morrison's voice exhausted. And? It's a start. Quarterly reports, third-party verification. 1 complaint suggesting this was performative. We're done, permanently. You have my word. I don't want your word. I want your resignation if you fail. In writing, signed by board. Silence. Then, end of day. Cameron reinstated access 46 hours after suspension. Flights resumed. Stock prices began recovering, though analysts predicted long-term brand damage. Richard faced consequences beyond termination. Cameron's civil suit revealed patterns spanning years, emails, reviews, testimony from former colleagues. Settled for $500,000 with stipulation barred from aviation industry 5 years. Every job application carried Google search results beginning with his name, ending with racist. Reputation finished. Jessica and Rachel found new employment. Jessica at regional carrier, Rachel in hospitality, neither in authority, both on probation. Marcus received offer from Stratus 3 weeks later. New position, Director of Community Technology Advocacy. First project, platform for reporting and tracking discrimination incidents across corporate environments. Journalist asked Cameron why she'd hired him. She smiled. He witnessed injustice and refused to look away. That's exactly who I want on my team. Summit launched Scholarship Fund for Students of Color in Aviation, $2 million annually, funded by executive bonus pools. Cameron had refused direct compensation, insisting money create actual change. 6 months later, Summit and Stratus held joint press conference announcing successful integration completion. Partnership survived, reshaped by consequence, but Cameron never flew Summit again. Not spite, not anger, because some bridges, once burned, reveal what always should have been built in their place. 1 month later, Cameron sat in a podcast studio. Voices that matter, hundreds of thousands of listeners. The host leaned forward. Many call what you did revenge, justified, but revenge. Your response? Cameron paused. Not revenge. Consequences. There's a difference. Explain. Revenge is personal, making someone feel your pain. Consequences are structural, ensuring pain stops, for you and everyone after. Voice steady. I wasn't thinking about Collier's humiliation or Morrison's stock price. I was thinking about the next black woman in first class, the next person told they don't belong, whether I could change the system. Did you? Small smile. Systems don't change overnight. Summit implemented policies, created positions, quarterly audits, progress. But real change takes years. People refusing, that's just how things are. Critics say you used privilege, wealth, power, for justice others can't access. They're right. I had leverage most don't. 700 million suspended with one email. Most passengers can't. They file ignored complaints, swallow humiliation, fighting costs too much. Pause. That's why I acted. Not just for myself, but because I could. Resources, platform, power to make them listen. If I'd stayed silent, accepted 18C, I'd be complicit. What should people take away? Camera direct. Dignity isn't negotiable. Your value doesn't depend on recognition. When you have power, any kind, even recording on your phone, you have responsibility to use it for something bigger. She thought about Marcus, passengers who applauded, the woman's tears. Every witness made a choice, record, speak up, or support the narrative I was the problem. Those choices shape whether the next person faces discrimination alone or with witnesses saying, this isn't right. You're still working with Summit? Walking away would have been easier. Wouldn't change anything. Staying engaged, holding accountable, forcing real change. Sustainable, not performative. Interview ended. 200,000 downloads first week. But Cameron thought about the email that morning. Young black woman, first corporate job, terrified of not belonging. She'd written back, "You belong." Not because someone gave permission, but because you claimed space. Their doubt says everything about them, nothing about you. That was the work. Not headlines, not settlements. Individual moments when someone like her decided they deserved space and refused to apologize. Have you ever watched injustice happen and said nothing? Most of us have. Not our place, not our fight. Speaking up costs more than silence. Marcus didn't believe that. Just a passenger. Software engineer heading home, could have put headphones back in, scrolled his feed, pretended not to see. He chose differently. Pulled out his phone, hit record, live streamed, not expecting viral, but because staying silent felt like participation. Participation in injustice, even passive, is choice. That choice changed everything. Not just for Cameron, not Summit Air, but 2 million who watched. Passengers who saw his courage found their own. Every person told they don't belong, wondering if anyone cares. You have that power. Maybe you can't suspend 700 million with one email, no platform, no title, no corner office. But you have a phone, a voice, ability to witness, document, refuse to look away. That's not small, that's everything. Systems change because ordinary people, like Marcus, like you, refuse to let injustice hide. Don't wait for someone else. Save yourself, then save the person next to you. Speak up. Record, report, refuse silence. Use whatever power you have, even if it feels small, because small courage compounds into movements. Here's what they don't want you remembering. The person you're dismissing, underestimating, treating invisible, might be holding your future. The woman told to sit in back might be the CEO whose contract keeps your company running. The overlooked candidate might disrupt your industry. The silenced voice might have saved you from blindness. Before judging by appearance, accent, skin color, do you know who you're dealing with? Cameron sat in 18C and let them think they'd won. Watched them celebrate small cruelty, casual disregard. Then showed them what power looks like with precision, patience, purpose. You don't need to be CEO, just refuse complicity. Stand up, speak out, document truth. When you see someone treated like they don't matter, make Marcus's choice. Choose to see them. Justice doesn't arrive alone. It's built by people deciding, moment by moment, dignity matters more than comfort. Remember Cameron in 18C. Remember, the person you underestimate today might determine your tomorrow. You have more power than you think. Use it.